So I was thinking over a number of things. I was thinking over the fallout from the so-called fracas involving Jacob Rees-Mogg. I think that was badly headlined because it wasn't really a fracas. It was a bunch of far left activists attacking a Conservative MP they don't like. That's really what it was. And I think attacking is the right word because there was aggression involved. It's lucky no one got seriously hurt. But there were angry scenes. Apparently, what happened, the BBC was surprisingly less biased in the broadcast report than they were in their online report. The BBC journalist, young guy I didn't recognise, said he felt that Mogg handled it well. So that was interesting. But apparently, everyone who was there, even people who didn't agree with Jacob Rees-Mogg, thought he handled the situation very well. Basically, he was very calm. I've never seen him lose his temper. He was very calm, and he said he wanted to engage with them. Um, Jordan Peterson has said similar things. Professor Jordan Peterson. I'm not sure what where Jordan Peterson would directly place his politics. I think he's described himself as libertarian, but don't quote me on that. Regardless, Jordan Peterson's being seen as a conservative. I think not entirely accurately, just because he's not a social justice warrior, and he speaks out against identity politics and so on. But in both situations, you had confrontation and you had questions about how we conduct democratic debate. Here's the thing: in politics, you'd have to be a robot. And by politics, I'm talking not just about elected representatives, but all of us, anyone who follows current affairs. You'd have to be a robot not to feel angry about something. And I am a little cynical, I suppose, of people who don't show any human emotions at all. I.e., if they're always ultra calm, I think it's a little too good to be true. I do think professional politicians know how to be diplomatic. They know how to get that temperament right. But what's to say Jacob Rees-Mogg doesn't go home and think, that was awful. How dare they try to shut me down? We don't know. Wouldn't matter because that's his private life. But that's really what I want to address: public political confrontation. Because there is a world of difference between arguing with someone online about politics and a real world, i.e., outside cyberspace, confrontation. I think generally people should try to be consistent what they say online. I think they should try to be truthful too. I do. I mean, I never bullshit anyone. If someone asks my opinion, I will tell them. I won't seek confrontation. So I suppose that's a bit of a difference. When I make these videos, I'm putting forward my views, whereas I wouldn't necessarily do that outside cyberspace. I wouldn't just go up to someone and say, I believe this because, what do you think? It doesn't work that way. And there are differences. You get civil discourse in organized debates at question time. It's generally quite civil. Occasionally hated words are exchanged. But people are generally not shouting in each other's faces because they know that the perception would be bad if they did so. Now, Jordan Peterson said something interesting in one of the situations where a group of activists tried to shut him down. He said that his supporters don't get angry, don't respond to them in that way. And he actually went outside, or he was forced to go outside the University of Toronto to continue his speech. And he said to his own supporters, don't get angry with them, because the way the media is nowadays, especially a 24-hour social media where every little nuance is picked up. Um, but the level of distortion is enormous. I think this is what he was alluding to. Things can be easily misunderstood. So I think the point he was making was that if some of his supporters got angry and kind of, I suppose you could say, fought back and tried to shout down those people, there will be certain media outlets with an agenda that then would frame it as LGBT students bullied by alt right activists or whatever. So there is enormous, enormous distortion going on with these situations. But I have to say, both Jacob Rees-Mogg and Jordan Peterson have the patience of saints. And I'm not sure I entirely agree with Jordan Peterson, although I've got a lot of respect for him. I'm not sure if I entirely agree that you should just be passive with this sort of attitude. Um, I think you should stand up to bullies. I mean, with the greatest respect to the professor, not everyone has the immediate sort of wit and skills of analysis that he has. So not everyone is equipped to respond to things in the way that he does. So what I'm basically saying is, for a lot of people, the human response, if someone is yelling in your face or trying to shout you down, is to fight back. Um, that's a totally human response. So I don't entirely agree. People should kind of just let it go, and the logic, well, they make themselves look bad. That's true, but the problem is the media, like I say, it has a vested interest. I mean, even the BBC, the way they framed the story originally with Jacob Rees-Mogg was Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg involved in fracas. That makes it sound like he was sort of fighting back, or it was. I mean, that was totally misleading. Um, but this is a very important thing because over the last decade, particularly in the United States, but in the UK as well, there have been a lot of public rallies, public demonstrations, and you would be forgiven for thinking it's entirely left wing. That's not actually true. In the Obama years, for example, I can think of plenty of right wing demonstrations. For example, gun activists who were protesting for the Second Amendment. Um, and whilst I detest the regressive left, the right is not being entirely honest if they say that they don't have regressive elements as well. There are people on the right who have also taken that approach. But I think what's happened is now that their man has got into the White House, the right has kind of toned down. And what we're seeing is the regressive left. But this is like a constant punch and Judy situation. As far as I'm concerned, both sides are as bad as each other, both hard elements. I do think in recent, let's say, the last 2 years, the intolerance has come much more from the hard left. I do stand by that because I think that's you're far more likely to see a bunch of left wing activists shut down a right wing speaker than a bunch of right wing activists shut down a left wing speaker. But it isn't universally true. I do think, for example, I mentioned the gun lobby because I think it's one of the most prominent examples. Very often, politically, they are very right wing, very conservative minded, and they will get in people's faces. They will yell at people, and they are aggressive about the way they go about things. So I don't agree it's entirely the left. But as a general observation, what's the best outcome for this? Because on one hand, you don't want to be a robot. You can't be absolutely. If you never get angry about a political issue, then you're not really. It's. I find it hard to believe you have any conviction, because anger is a very natural human emotion for what you see as perceived injustice, whatever that may be. I have to say, in my own life, I've been quite lucky. I've never been in a very heated face to face confrontation. I've had a few run ins, um, and I'll name a few of them. 3 years ago, during the 4 years ago now almost, during the Scottish independence referendum, I'm obviously a staunch unionist. I've made no secret of that. I was on the Better Together side of things. We were on Princess Street in Edinburgh. Actually, it was the Royal Mile, and there were a lot of nationalists around, and a few of them did. They could tell we had the Union flags, and they did challenge us. There was no violence, I have to say, but it got quite testy at times. And there were people shouting in my face, and it was quite tense. Now I'm looking back, I'm quite proud of my response. I didn't rise to the bait. I didn't resort in kind, but nor did I, let them away with it. I argued back. But it was quite a tense situation, quite unpleasant. Um, I've been in other situations where I've had tense debates with Chinese friends and acquaintances over a range of issues to do with the Communist Party over there. I remember speaking with an acquaintance. I wouldn't call her a great friend. She was an acquaintance in Shanghai, and her attitude was, "Oh, it's all Western bias." And she tried to tell me that China is actually a democracy, and basically we disagreed on just about everything. It was civil. We certainly weren't yelling at each other, but it was quite tense. I don't regret having it. I wouldn't necessarily want it again, but I don't regret having it. I could say I spoke with a signed up member of the Communist Party in Shanghai. I'm kind of proud of myself for that. But the point is, yeah, I've had a number of experiences. But, I've been lucky insofar as I see videos online, particularly from the States, but you get them in Canada, in the UK, and Australia, and other democracies as well, where you get these public demonstrations and you get these clashes. I mean, one recent example was the Charlottesville thing. And there you had two sides. You had, without question, there were neo Nazis there. There was also, I have no doubt, far left activists there. Now, because tragically a young woman died, um, then the side which she was on became the victims. I personally don't think it was that black and white, but that's um, the point is perception is very, very powerful. So if you defend yourself, you have to be very careful that you do it as a last resort. Because if you don't have self control and if you lash out and a camera picks that up, it is so easy for that to spiral into something that can be incredibly damaging. People have had their reputations absolutely destroyed by perception. And it wouldn't matter if you say I was defending myself, because unfortunately, internet opinion has already made the judgment. Um, that's why I'm always wary of very short video clips, because you can't tell the whole situation, and we have to be very we have to double guess everything, because more often than not there is more to it than meets the eye. And it does really irritate me how the media generally will do this. They will take a little segment of something and then say this is the whole story. Um, and there is an agenda there. I mean, left leaning media will turn people into heroes for no other reason than shouting at a protest. I mean, they've done this many, many times. But I've no doubt Fox News does the same thing as well with their equivalent on the right. So it leaves us centrists thinking, well, you have these two warring tribal camps, and you sort of wonder what's the point of going to a counter protest, because people will say, "Oh, well, it's to show that their opinion, that side, doesn't have support." But surely, in some ways, it would just be effective saying, "Okay, let them have their little rally, and then they'll not become news." The point about counter protests is you then turn them into the news story. So let's say a group of white nationalists turn up. Certainly, their twisted worldview should be challenged, but if you then go there and aggressively confront them, what happens? It becomes the headlines, and then they get more airtime. Think about that for a second. I do think that there is a strong argument to be made that in a democracy, no one should have a monopoly on free speech. So no one should say we can make our demo and no one can challenge us. But I don't see the point of getting into people's faces because you disagree with them. You're not going to convert them. They're not going to convert you. And in the end of the day, it just becomes a case of yelling in each other's face. It's very unpleasant. It's potentially dangerous because it can escalate into violence. People have been hurt at these things, and tragically, in some cases, even killed. So, my line would be it's better to engage in an adult debate in an organized situation rather than just yell at each other in a demonstration. I mean, I understand the logic for that, and I'm not saying for a second people shouldn't do it. But I do think if you're going to go to a political demonstration, you should be very wary of how you're perceived. By all means, be passionate. That's I think that's normal, but you have to have self control. If you then start yelling in your opponent's faces, if you then resort to, throwing things at the police, etc., that is going to play badly in the court of public opinion. And I do think, like I say, both the left and right have a track record in this. I do think it's been more the domain of the left in recent years, but only 5 years ago, there were certain right wing activists who were behaving in a pretty aggressive manner. And I think it's disingenuous to say that they weren't, particularly in the United States. But perception is such a powerful thing. And the thing is, it's not about lacking conviction. I mean, I'll be honest. There's opinions that I hear, and there's things I say make me very, very angry. And yeah, I know that I'm angry. You know, when you're angry, you're breathing heavily. It's so believe me, I don't have any lack of spirit, but I'm also acutely aware of perception. Having said that, I do think that no one can be humanly expected to not respond if a masked thug is getting in your face. And let's say, I don't know, let's say I was speaking and people took issue with what I was saying. Let's say I was an elected MP or a writer or any public figure. And people of the ilk of those who attacked Jacob Rees-Mogg decide to, burst in and get in my face. I can't guarantee I would remain as composed as he did. I'll be honest about that. I can't guarantee I would remain that calm. I would know that I would have to try, but I can't guarantee that I would because I haven't been in that situation, thankfully, very much. The few times that I have, I think I've handled it pretty well. But politics can really, really rev people up into tribal like behavior. And it's so important that no matter how strongly you feel about something, you try very hard to have self control. It's not about being insincere, it's not about not letting your passions show, it's about how you show them. And that's the bottom line. Let me know your thoughts.